Hello and welcome to Scare You to Sleep. I'm your host, Shelby Novak, and I'm here to read you a bedtime story. This week I have a story for you that I've been wanting to do for a while now. So let's skip the chit-chat and get right to Teeth.jpg. I'd never been too fond of anyone at my local school. They were all a little rude and boring for me. You see, I grew up in a small area with not many people interested in art like I am, so I had to venture off from home. I found myself attending a pretty rural art college. It's sort of like a normal university, except it's full of big-headed people. The only reason I'm here is because I've always wanted to be an illustrator, a kids' book designer of sorts. I had a keen interest in children's media and classic books such as the Arthur series. So when I was sent to live at this college, I was taken aback when I realized a lot of the other students here were all fine artists. You know the kind, the ones who like to splatter paint onto a canvas and claim it's art. I'm not really big on that sort of thing, but I didn't question it. I settled into the new place pretty quickly. I was sharing a dorm with a few other students. There was myself, a graphic designer named Josh, a director and animator called Lily, and one more guy called Daniel. Daniel was one of those fine artists I just described to you. His room was decorated with photographs of distorted women, and he always had weird music playing, too. It was sort of like trippy 60s stuff. He also liked to smoke, so his room smelled like an old ashtray. It was pretty gross, but he was a nice enough guy, and we all got along well. We soon became a tightly packed group of friends. It was the start of a new term for us, having all came back from home after spending the summer there. We unpacked our things and began talking about what we'd done over the break. "I went hiking with my stepdad. We did one of those summer camps," said Josh. "I spent most of my time with my girlfriend. We watched films and went to see some plays, too," Lily said. She did a lot of whining about missing her sporty partner, so we were happy they'd had some time together. I hadn't really done much worth mentioning, just the usual stuff. Parties and trips with my family. Nothing that special. I was just about to pipe up and speak when I got interrupted. "I was at the dentist," we heard Daniel say. "My father is a doctor of sorts, so he let me come with him and explore the hospital. My favorite place was the dentistry. I got to touch and feel the teeth. It was so cool." We all stared at him, a bit confused. Were you allowed to have random strangers go into hospital rooms, let alone play with equipment? We didn't really care. We knew Daniel was that sort of guy anyway. He was known for getting in trouble for the sake of art. That was always his excuse. We all spent the first couple of days getting to grips with our assignments, finding out what we had to do. Naturally, my task was to study some illustrators and mimic their styles. Josh spent some money on a new Mac for design tests, and Lily had to start playing about with claymation. It was a pretty nice vibe when we were all at our dorms, talking and swapping ideas. At least it was nice, until Daniel started insulting us. He'd never been the same since he came back from summer break. He seemed more cold and distant. He never told us anything about his projects, not even what the subject was. It was pretty normal for him to be reserved, but never this much. At nights, he made himself dinner, shut himself in his room, cranked up the music, and not to be seen until the next morning. The rest of us would go out places, like bowling or down to a local gig. Daniel used to happily tag along, but not anymore. We assumed that something must have happened to him, so we decided not to press him on it. One night, myself and Josh had gone out. Lily didn't come with us. She said she wanted to see if Daniel was okay, since he hadn't been talking to us for a few days now. We could see her point and complied. She spent the evening knocking on his door, trying to get him to speak with her. Just before we left, we saw it open and Lily step inside before it was locked again. Brushing it off, we headed out. We'd gone to see a movie and then for a few innocent drinks. It was fun, but we didn't get home till around 2 a.m. When we arrived back, Josh said goodnight and went straight to sleep. I didn't want to go to bed yet. I was pretty damn hungry. Drinking always made me hungry, so I raided our fridge and found some cold pizza from the night before. I was going to go back to my room when I realized something I didn't notice before. Daniel wasn't in his room, and Lily wasn't in hers. Due to Daniel's strange new behavior of locking himself in his room until early hours, and the fact that Lily never went anywhere without texting us, this was pretty weird. I went over to his door and gave it a knock, and it opened right up. It wasn't locked or anything. I assumed he and her had gone out with some of his Ponzi art friends, but it wasn't like Daniel to leave his door open. I've always been a nosy son of a bitch, so I stepped inside to see if there were any signs that he had gone somewhere. His keys and jacket were missing, but he'd left his wallet on his desk. The other thing that was odd was that his laptop was on his bed and still on. Curiosity got the better of me. Perhaps this could have been my chance to find out about the art project he'd been hiding. I mean, Daniel was a fine artist, remember, so it could have been anything. I noticed that he had a USB plugged in and 2 files on the screen. One was called Dentist Photos, and the other file was a singular image named Teeth.jpg. I clicked on the Dentist Photos file. It was just pictures of people's teeth, as well as plastic models of teeth. Nothing interesting. I clicked back off the file and decided to check out Teeth.jpg. The image would be forever burned into my brain. It startled me so bad that I slammed the laptop shut, shaking as I sat back. I wasn't sure if I wanted to lift the screen again, but I knew I had to or Daniel would know someone touched his laptop. I raised it, staring at the image for a brief moment before clicking away from it nervously. I then made a decision. I needed to show this to Josh and Lily in the morning. This was seriously messed up. I mean, I knew that Daniel was an artistic kind of guy, but this was insane. I quickly bolted back to my own room and scoured for my USB drive. Eventually, I found it and darted back to Daniel's laptop, where I copied the image onto my USB. I stared at it for a little while longer. I was trying to dismiss it as mere photo manipulation, but there was just something so wrong about it. Perhaps it was the black, soulless eyes, or the fact that whoever or whatever this creature was, it was pulling up its mouth in such a weird and disturbing way. It almost looked forced, like this thing had been made to pose this way. I shook it off as mere paranoia and fixed up the laptop so that it didn't look tampered with before I went back to my own room. Soon enough, I heard our front door open. Then the sound of footsteps. Then Daniel's door locking. Daniel was back home, but there were no signs of Lily. The next morning, I waited until Daniel had gone out for one of his lectures. Since it was a Friday, Josh and I had the morning off. I decided now would be a good time to show him the image. I asked him if he wanted to see what Daniel had been hiding from us. He was confused, but also eagerly said yes. I brought my laptop into the living room, loaded up my USB, and opened the image for both of us to see. Josh's expression fell into shock before he started spluttering.
What the fuck is that thing?
I could tell by his reaction that both of us were on the same page. This couldn't have been an art project image. There was no way that this would pass as fine art, would it? I mean, sure, art can be creepy at times, but I couldn't imagine Daniel's teachers appreciating such a disgusting picture.
I know that Daniel can be a creepy son of a bitch, but that isn't right. We've got to show Lily that...
We both cut off one another, then paused briefly before looking at each other in confusion. Where was Lily? I realized that she hadn't come back with Daniel last night, and that neither of us had seen her that morning. When I explained to Josh, he began to worry. Lily was never the kind to just sneak off and not tell anyone. I picked up my phone and began to ring her mobile. For a while, there was silence. Then, from Lily's room, we heard a faint buzzing sound. Josh got up and walked inside rather quickly. He'd never been one to go into the girls' rooms. He came back out, holding Lily's phone in his hand, with a worried look on his face. She was gone, and we had no way to get a hold of her.
Maybe she's just gone to a lecture and forgot her phone,
I stuttered. Josh shook his head, chewing on his lip from nerves.
No. Lily doesn't have lectures on a Friday, remember? She'd at least say hello to us and take her phone. She lives on that thing. She never stops texting her girlfriend.
He was right. Lily's life revolved around her phone. We knew there was no way she'd leave it. Suddenly, it lit up. Someone was calling her. We both looked at it, then back at one another before Josh passed it to me. I brought it up to my ear before speaking. Hello? On the other end of the line was her girlfriend. I recognized her husky voice.
Oh, Lily, there you are. Thank God you're okay. You didn't text me at all last night or this morning. I thought something was wrong.
I cringed a bit, realizing I had to break it to her that I wasn't Lily. As I spoke, I heard the girl begin to get upset. She was breathing quite heavily, and I could hear that sniffling sound someone makes when they cry. I felt so bad for her. But perhaps she was a chance to find out anything I could about Lily.
Where is Lily? She hasn't spoken to me since last night. I thought she was just playing a joke on me, but now I don't know.
I looked at Josh with a confused stare as he began to pace around a little bit. I put the phone on loudspeaker and asked her,
Why did you think Lily was playing a joke on you? Did she say anything odd?
Yes,
her girlfriend replied.
She sent me one message at around 1:30 a.m.
I glanced at Josh, baffled, before I asked again.
What did the message say?
Help me.
Me and Josh had wide and worried eyes. Lily would never pull this kind of prank on anyone, let alone her own girlfriend. She always told us how worried she was about her getting paranoid, so we knew she wouldn't send a message like that unless she had a good reason. I continued to speak to the girlfriend, but I was getting nowhere. I reassured her that we knew where Lily was and that she'd be calling her back tonight. Her girlfriend seemed suspicious, but agreed and put the phone down. Myself and Josh paced back and forth. We had no idea what this could mean. Why would Lily send a message like that? We continued to think for a while. We decided that until we knew where she was, we were going to skip our lectures. We spent a long time thinking things over and began to write down the connections we could make. Afterwards, Josh read out the list to me so I could think it over.
First, Lily goes into Daniel's room around 10 o'clock p.m. She's locked in. Then, we return home at 2 a.m. During that time, at around 1:30 a.m., we know that Lily asked her girlfriend for help. You discover that neither Lily or Daniel are home yet. Daniel's door is unlocked, and his laptop has been left on. You find the image and then leave. You then return to your room and hear Daniel come home. But not Lily. Lily is still not back home yet. But Daniel is. What the hell could this mean?
I thought it over for a while, then came to a conclusion. I didn't want to make this connection, but it was the only one I could think of.
Daniel did something to Lily. We have to confront him tonight if Lily doesn't come home between now and then, okay?
Josh looked shocked, but he agreed. Daniel would be our only chance of finding out what happened to Lily. Later that night, there were still no signs of her. We knew that her girlfriend would be calling soon, so we decided to turn the phone off. We didn't want to reassure her with false information. It was 6 p.m. before Daniel finally came home. He looked rather startled to see us both standing there in the living room. He lightly placed his art folder and satchel down against the sofa as we both stood up. Josh spoke first, and I could tell he was trying to keep his composure.
Daniel, we'd like to have a talk. It's about Lily.
Daniel's eyes seemed to widen ever so slightly, but it was nothing I considered worth thinking over. He tilted his head at us, looking confused as he asked,
Why? Is something wrong?
I shook my head. I didn't want him to think we were accusing him of anything. We would never get any answers out of him that way. He did look a little on edge, though, glancing away from us as he itched his wrist under his baggy gray jumper. He pushed his rather dark black bangs out of his face as he spoke.
Then what is this? Is she okay? I mean, I know she left her phone here last night, so I suppose there wouldn't be any way to get a hold of her.
We didn't say anything. We weren't too sure about how to proceed. How were we supposed to ask him if he did anything to Lily without him taking offense? I then realized something. It took me a moment to process before I spoke. You just said she left her phone here last night, right? How the hell did you know that? Josh's eyes lit up. He'd just realized it too. How did Daniel know she'd left her phone behind unless they went somewhere? We already acknowledged the fact that Lily never left her phone anywhere, so how on earth was he aware of it? He was silent for a while, before he pushed past us and walked into his room, slamming the door. We walked over to his door, banging on it harshly before he started shouting,
Leave me alone! I have coursework to do. I'm sure Lily will show up tonight. Just stop being so paranoid.
We didn't know what to do. Daniel clearly knew a lot more than he let on, but there was no way we were going to get it out of him. We walked back into the living room and slumped down. I ran a hand through my hair. What the hell was going on? I then realized that Daniel had left his bags on the sofa. He must have been too flustered to pick them up when he stormed into his room. I peered around to his door. He hadn't left yet, but I knew soon enough he would be coming out to get his bags. In a moment of madness, I picked up the satchel and emptied its contents onto the coffee table. I could see Josh's eyes widen before he whispered to me frantically, What the hell are
you doing? What if he sees you?
I didn't care. I needed to know anything I could about Lily. She was a roommate, but also a best friend. I couldn't just leave this to solve itself. I pushed through documents and came across what looked like a ticket. I crumpled it up and pushed it into my pocket, then found a zipped-up document bag. I pushed it into Josh's hands and told him to go hide it. He complied and put it in his room. I then quickly placed all the other stuff back into Daniel's bag and rested it up, just how it looked before walking into Josh's room. I watched Daniel go back to the living room and pick up his bags before entering his room again. Josh grabbed the zipped-up file from under his pillow as we both sat down on his bed. We didn't say anything. We just read the front cover of it. Teeth. It sent chills up my spine. I knew that whatever was inside would have a connection to the image I found on the computer, but otherwise, what we saw was nothing like we expected. It was a series of photographs. The first was of what looked like an abandoned room of sorts. The walls were covered in old floral wallpaper, and the floor was just damp wood. It looked like it hadn't been used in years. The next pictures were of plastic tools. We noticed that they were linked to dentistry. You know, like needles and drills. It was pretty creepy, but what came after made us both drain of color. There were photos of Lily smiling. We flipped through every single one of her. In each, she had her big, toothy grin on display. Such a sweet smile. One of its most distinct features was a large front tooth, the left one. We always found it cute, but now it was no laughing matter. We noticed labels on the backs of the photographs, and that each tooth on each photo was marked. There were notes attached that said things like remove or replace. It knocked Josh sick, and I was more terrified now than ever. We knew we couldn't confront Daniel about these photos. It would get us nowhere. We just sat in silence for a long time, staring at them in disbelief. I then remembered the ticket I'd found and stuffed into my pocket. I pulled it out with a shaky hand, bringing it to my vision. It read, Group Ticket 2. Location, Station Road. Date/time, 28-09-2011. 11:34 p.m. We both looked at each other with firm gazes. That was just yesterday evening. We knew exactly what we had to do now. We had to find where Lily was. We didn't see Daniel for the rest of the evening. Josh had become incredibly paranoid. He asked if he could sleep in my room tonight. I thought it was a bit awkward, but I didn't mind. I mean, he was scared real bad, so I didn't want to leave him alone. While Josh was sleeping, I printed off the disturbing image for referencing, then spent most of the night planning for the next day. I had already emailed our lecturers, letting them know we weren't going to show up because we felt sick. I also checked how far Station Road was. To my surprise, it was only an hour's drive away. So I figured we could take Josh's car up there and look around for where Daniel and Lily had been. The whole time, I kept staring at the Teeth.jpg image. A horrible thought crept into my mind. I didn't want to think about it, but it could have been a possibility. Was the person in the picture Lily? Every time I thought about it, I'd shake it off, telling myself I was just being paranoid. But It all added up. The timing, the photographs. It would make sense. I didn't want to believe it, and I certainly wasn't going to until we found Lily. The next morning, myself and Josh got ready at around 6 a.m. We wanted to be out of the dorm before Daniel woke up, and we made sure to lock our own doors. We also decided to take Lily's phone with us. We didn't want to leave anything behind that would indicate we were being suspicious. Eventually, we left the dorm and got into Josh's car. I had brought along a small bag of different things, such as the photographs, a flashlight, a camera, and a notepad with a pen. We loaded ourselves into the car and made our way towards Station Road, able to pinpoint it with my mobile GPS. When we got there, we found that it was in a rather abandoned-looking area of town. The place was practically deserted. All we could see were tall, crumbling buildings and little empty houses. We took out the photo of the room and began to walk up to each house. We pressed our faces to the windows to see if we could make out that floral wallpaper, like in the room in the photograph. We spent a good few hours doing this, but for nothing. We were getting pretty angry at this point. We just wanted Lily back. Josh got so mad that he walked up to one of the house walls and started kicking it harshly, shouting from the top of his lungs,
Daniel, you sick bastard!
Just as he kicked the wall one last time, we noticed it began to tear. Josh looked down at his feet and realized he had ripped what appeared to be a piece of painted paper away from it. He quickly tore down the remaining pieces to reveal what looked like an outdoor basement. The doors were rusty and scratched, but we noticed that the metallic handle was clean, as if it had been tampered with. Josh looked over his shoulder to me. I gave him a nod and quickly took a photo of the layout of this basement-like thing. Josh then walked down to the doors and gave them a push. To both of our surprises, they were blocked by a plank of wood, which Josh was thankfully able to remove fairly easily. We then opened the door slowly and cautiously. Who knew what could have been kept in there? It was obviously hidden for a reason. If only we knew what was coming. Perhaps it would have saved us both from throwing up. As we stepped inside, we were met with a rancid odor. Neither of us knew what the smell was, but it made us both feel instantly sick. Josh gagged and coughed, covering his face with his shirt. I swallowed back vomit as I walked on. I pulled out my flashlight and shined it across the pitch-black stone room. We heard nothing, but as we walked further inside, the smell only thickened. It was getting so bad that Josh threw up behind me. He quickly composed himself and stumbled back upright before we continued. As I looked around the space, my eyes met with something on the floor that made my heart race and the flashlight drop from my grasp. It was Lily's knitted sweater, the one she always wore when we went out for pizza or bowling, with the same little torn threads on her sleeves where she'd chew on it. I could see Josh from my peripheral. His eyes were just as wide as mine. The last bit of color drained from his face. I picked up the sweater, holding it up in front of me when I noticed there was a large, thick blood stain soaked all the way through it. It started from the collar and became thinner as it went down. I was now the one to throw up. I collapsed onto my knees, puking heavily. I didn't know what to do. I didn't even know what to think. I soon composed myself and stood up again, gripping the flashlight as I put the sweater in my bag. Through blurred, teary eyes, I pressed on. From where I was standing, there was nothing left to see. Then, there was the flicker of a small switch from behind me. Red light filling the corner of the room. Josh screamed louder than anything I had ever heard before. My stomach was in knots as I shined my light where he was standing. He was beside a large black table, just standing there in complete terror, blocking my view of it. I could only imagine what he was looking at, and I truly wish I had left it to my imagination. I walked over to his side. There, I laid eyes on the sight before me. It was Lily. She was strapped down onto the table wearing nothing but her jeans. Her body was covered in thick layers of tape, keeping her strapped down. One of her arms dangled down to her side. The other was nowhere to be seen. Its replacement was a taped-up stub covered in bloodstains. I could hardly breathe. My stomach was so knotted and my breathing so tight that all I could do was stare. I looked up at Lily's face. Her head had been forced back, and we could see that her innocent blue eyes had been violently gouged out. They'd been replaced with thick black wax that filled the holes. Her nose had been contorted and broken, snapped in many places. But the worst part of it all was her mouth. Her jaw had been forced open, her maw filled with the same black wax. Her teeth had been ripped out and misplaced in all different directions, and her lips had been stretched upright, tearing her cheek to reveal more teeth that had been pulled from her mouth. It gave her a contorted, horrible smile. Her face was covered in streams of her own dried-up blood. I stared at the hand that was holding the mouth open. It was her own. Her hand had been stitched to the ripped cheek. The flesh was torn and falling apart under her nails, which were cracked and chipped, staples and little threads holding them in place. The red fluorescent light created horrific shadows and highlighted every grotesque feature now visible on Lily's face. I silently and numbly pulled out the picture of Teeth.jpg, stared at it, then looked back at the real thing. They were identical. Josh brought a shaky hand over Lily's cheek before he collapsed by the side of the table. I could hear him sobbing horrendously by her side before he passed out next to me. I too felt like I was on the brink of collapsing. But something caught my attention. I could feel the presence of someone else entering the room. But I already knew who it was. I knew now there was nothing we could do. I heard the doors slam shut, the plank of wood being placed over them. I heard the sound of footsteps inching closer and closer until I could feel their presence behind me. I knew he was there, and I knew there was no way out. I heard his voice speak very faintly behind me.
I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but it's okay. It's all for the sake of art.
But that wasn't what made me collapse. I knew well enough that my fate was sealed. After he finished speaking, though, I heard one more tiny sound that made my heart ache and my tears stream further down my numb cheeks before my vision faded away and my hands slipped from the table. I could hear Lily choking. Thanks for listening. And remember, if you'd like more Scare You to Sleep, you can join my Patreon, patreon.com/scareyoutosleep, where you can find ad-free episodes and bonus videos, which is something I'm starting to get into. So yeah, consider joining. It would be awesome of you. And thank you so much again to so many of you who are buying merch. It's been incredible, and I am so happy with this new merch company. Again, I have some that I need to post the pictures of the merch that I have so you can see. I love the quality. So many of you are getting aprons. I'm really excited about the aprons and the denim jackets and the shirt. I mean, everything, really. But I love the glasses and the mugs, and I like the food stuff. Of course, you know that. So yeah, if you like, there's a link in my show notes to get some merch. It also comes with a little thank you video from me. So that's kind of cool that I'm able to do that. It's like a built-in cameo with your order, I guess. Yeah. And if you'd like to follow updates about the show and more about just little things, you can follow the show on social media at Scare You to Sleep on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and you can follow me personally at Shelby B. Novak on Twitter and Instagram. I'm also on Facebook, but I don't really post much there these days. So yeah, Shelby B. Novak on Twitter and Instagram if you want to follow me personally. And again, at Scare You to Sleep for all of those sites as well if you want to follow that. If you have a story you have written and you'd like it to be considered to be on the show, please send it to scareyoutosleep@gmail.com. And I recently went through a bunch of submissions, and we have some great stuff coming up in the next few weeks, everyone. I'm very excited for some of these stories. I mean, for all of them, honestly. But I'm very excited for you to hear a lot of these stories, all of the stories. I keep saying a lot or some of, I really mean all of them. I promise. So yeah, and we're getting into Halloween season. So I will get a little choosier, but if you have a Halloween themed story you'd like on the show that maybe you've been kicking around, maybe you were waiting until closer to Halloween season, I know it's July, but now is the time to get that in. Around here, I have to start spooky season early. Well, it's spooky season year round around here, but I start my Halloween season a little early because that's just how things go. So please get those in. Or if now you're like, oh, hey, that would be cool. I've been wanting to write a story about Halloween. Again, here's your sign to get it in the next few weeks, and so it'll be considered for the Halloween season, and we can have it at the right time of year. Not that I mind Halloween themed stories outside of Halloween season, because sometimes it's fun to just be like, Halloween, sometime in like May. It's just nice to think about, especially this time of year when it's so hot outside. And aren't we all just looking forward to those days of hot chocolate or apple cider and a nice cool breeze in the evening outside, getting the pants scared off of us by scare actors, because I know that I'm looking forward to that. So again, scareyoutosleep@gmail.com if you'd like a story considered for the show. Unfortunately, not all of them make the show for various reasons. A lot of it being mainly my limited talents, So one piece of advice I would give is there have been stories that are very, very good that I have rejected from the show simply because there are too many characters. And I am but one woman who is but a self-taught voice actor. And I'm not exactly Mel Blanc or Billy West. So that is one reason sometimes I'm just afraid the audience will get confused unless I give every single actor or character like a different accent. And sometimes and that might be also kind of off-putting. I don't know. I try to work around it when it's a certain amount of actor, or I keep saying actors, characters. But if there's like 11 people in a room, I'm just afraid people will get confused because of my limitations, my own limitations. So that is one thing to consider. By the way, earlier I was sitting here and I had my mic on, and there's, not to like mic-splain to anyone, but I'm sure there are many of you out there who don't use microphones because, Why would you? But there's a monitor on, like, I don't have a USB mic. I have an interface that I plug my microphone into, and then the interface plugs into my computer. And there's a monitor button where if I turn it off, I don't hear the sound coming through my microphone, which is handy when you're editing and things like that. You don't want all that extra noise. I turn it on for, like, right now when I'm narrating so I can hear my own voice. And I had it on earlier because I was waiting, or I was just getting this set up to do this intro and outro. And I swear to fucking God, I heard something tapping. And at first I was not alarmed because I had been listening to ASMR. And I went to YouTube because I was like, that's pretty annoying. That's not soothing to listen to. And so I went to my YouTube tab and was like, what video is this? Well, my video was over and there was no video playing. And I got out of all of my tabs because I was like, what is it? Because sometimes microphones do make noises from the connection. It'll make like a tapping type of noise, but it's like a clicking kind of thing if your the wire isn't connected well enough, if that makes sense. And you've probably heard these sounds before in various things. But anyway, it was not that. And I messed with my wire and it was not that. So I don't know what it was. I'm sure it was just electronic. I'm sure it was nothing. But it was freaky. It was one of those moments where, hey, it was probably not ghosts, but it was still eerie nonetheless because I was sitting here like, ugh, what is this ASMR? And it wasn't. Because it fully sounded like someone like tapping on a microphone. Like, let me see. I can do it for you now. Like this. Like that. Was that soothing? Okay, I'm gonna go. I'm trying to, and I'm not succeeding very well, but I'm trying to start matching the vibe of the end of the show to the rest of the show. I hear your constructive criticisms about the vibe being a little too breakneck at the end of the show and going straight to me just laughing and joking, and I totally agree. I agree. Because again, I've been watching a few different ASMR artists and things live on like TikTok in the evenings. And every once in a while they'll get into like laughing fits or they'll kind of get off topic and they'll just hit a totally different mode. Like there was one person who was like doing the singing bowls, the sound bowls, you know what I'm talking about? I love the sound of those things. And she kind of got into a laughing fit, which, like, no shade. It's live. I can't even imagine doing live content every night. My hat's off to those types of creators who go live because I like to be able to edit myself. But I noticed it did kind of, the comments were very much like, this is killing the vibe. Even I felt myself not fully pulled out of it, but it was just like, it did like change it up. So again, I'm going to try to pull back these rambles at the end. Just a warning to those of you, the longer rambles are now going to like live on pace. They won't go away fully, but they're going to pull back a little bit, and I'm going to try to keep the vibe lower and less interruptive, if that makes sense. So yeah, anyway. Oh, you do? I will keep the baking in here. Don't worry though. And so I'll tell you, this week I baked some of my favorite sugar cookie recipe because I'm going to be seeing a friend tomorrow and we're going to be going to see Long Legs, and I'm so excited. I hope it hasn't been overhyped. I'm very excited to see it though. And I haven't seen this friend in a little while, so I wanted to make her some cookies. I love making my friends baked goods. I just love it. In fact, I'm kind of considering making her a few other things because that's my love language. I don't know the love languages very well, but whatever cooking for friends and loved ones is, that's what I have. Or is your love language what you like other people doing for you? I don't really know. I never read the book. It's a book, right? I don't know. But anyway, I love nourishing my friends and family. Well, I guess it's cookies, so it's nourishing their soul though. So I think that's just as important sometimes as nourishing the body. Okay, I'm going to go and make the rest of these cookies and hopefully not. Oh, by the way, I just an update on my creepy dreams. I have been having, ever since I had that weird, not sleep paralysis, weird thing happen to me that I mentioned. I think I should mention it on the main show. I might have mentioned it. No, I think it was on Patreon in a ramble. But anyway, I had a very strange experience a couple weeks ago. And I've been still having some weird experiences. That's why this tapping thing was weird to me. So anyway, hopefully send me good no nightmare vibes tonight. That would be really cool of you. So no nightmares for me, hopefully. So send those vibes my way. And I say that after I do a scary show and I do a whole bonus thing that's called Guided Nightmares. So that's it's kind of, I don't know if it's ironic, but it's maybe not fair of me to ask you to give me no nightmare vibes when I am clearly sending out many nightmare vibes to all of you. All right, I'm going to go. I hope you drink your water. Please drink water. Please stay hydrated at this time of year. I mean, unless you're in Australia, well, it's winter over there, right? I was just thinking of Australia because I have a lot of listeners there. You guys love podcasts. I dream of visiting Australia. I really do. Literally, I've had many dreams of being in Australia. So I don't know what my subconscious is telling me. Maybe my true love lies in Australia. I don't know. Who knows? Okay, I'm going to go. Go get some sleep. Sweet dreams.
Let's face it, life in Mayfair can take a little getting used to.
You've reached Alternative Biome Normalization Services. What can I do for you?
Hi. This is the exterminators, right? There's a thing outside my house. I think it's eating my driveway.
We handle things differently here.
Hey, Jim. I'm outside your work right now, and the whole building is just gone? I know you said you weren't in on Wednesdays, but is this what you meant?
And if you don't know what's going on, that can be scary.
911, what's your emergency?
Please, help me.
What is the nature of your emergency, ma'am?
I thought it would go away if I stopped feeding it, but now it's in the house.
Ma'am, please try to calm down.
Join the Mayfair Watchers Society, a found footage horror anthology podcast made in collaboration with horror artist Trevor Henderson. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and at mayfairwatchers.com.